All right, so welcome to, um, we're gonna say it's a class practice, an informal class powwow, is what we're gonna call it. And I appreciate you guys coming and spending your time. I know it was kind of spur of the moment this week. Go ahead and if you can, if your schedule allows, plan for it for next week. We'll do it again at the same time. And like I said before, it's gonna be a real quick meeting, not to anything crazy, because tomorrow we're gonna do our regular Zoom and get in depth with chapter 2 review and stuff like that. But some of the things I wanted to talk to y'all about right now that y'all have read about this week so far. And I think chapter 2 is Monday and Tuesday this week, and today y'all started on like chapter review because the exam is tomorrow, right? But there's some stuff in this chapter. This is the beginning of coding. So there's some stuff in this chapter that's really going to help you guys out, get familiar with the manuals, and save y'all some time, really, essentially. So if you have your book, one of the first things I want to point out to y'all for y'all to pay attention to and kind of you can reference at different times is on page 31 in your textbook, Bucks Medical and for Medical Billing and Coding. On page 31, there is this awesome, just a list, and it's all the chapters that are in the tabular section of the ICD-10-CM. And you can see chapters 1 through 22. And this is a really great place to start with your tabbing. You remember last week we talked about tabbing your manual? This is a great list to go by. And like I said, I like to start before the tabular, like in the Roman numeral pages to get those good reference pages nice and handy. Don't necessarily have to do that. A lot of people just stick with this list. This is a great list because it lists all 22 chapters and what they are. Like chapter 1, infectious and parasitic diseases. And then it kind of gives you the code range, A00 to B99. This is great. I ask a lot of your daily questions in the next several months are going to be give me the code range for blah. This is a great reference. You can find some of those ranges there. And also where you can find those ranges in the manual itself.
I have a question.
Give me 1 second. Let me finish this point so I don't lose my spot. We'll get to questions in a second. But if you look, yo, open the book and there's a picture of a penis. Was not expecting that. Hadn't seen that in the manual before. Like an actual photograph, not one of the illustrations, like a photograph. Hadn't seen that before. Anyway, in your chapters, there's this color border on every single page. And if y'all notice on that border, it says what that chapter contains, what it is, and it gives you the code range. It gives you code range. So that's another very easy way to find what you're looking for. And also, for your certification exam, when y'all go for your certification exam, it will not be cold coding like what we do. It will not be this type of coding where you have to sort through a scenario, a bunch of medical terms, and figure out what it is. It's not going to be like that. They're going to give you something, and then they're going to give you a list of 4 codes, and it's going to say, pick me the correct code. Process of elimination. Much shorter process, okay, than what we do in class. What we do in class is from start to finish cold coding, from seeing the patient to billing it out, okay? The certification exam is different. It's all multiple choice, so it's really process of elimination. So if they give you something like, let's say, heart disease or cardiovascular disease or something to that effect that you know has to do with the heart, and then they give you like 2 codes that are A0 something or B0 something, you can look at this page up here and tell this is infectious diseases. Cardiovascular is not going to be in here. So you can ixnay those 2 codes right off the bat. And then you're left with just 2 codes to check to see which one's the correct answer. Okay? So that's super helpful. knowing that your code ranges for the entire chapter are on every single page. The color box, okay? So that's the first thing. That's the first really helpful thing. All right, so go ahead with your question.
It was something similar to that. So like whenever we do go to our certification, like what tell us where like what book we have to use for which question, or that's just something that we have to figure out?
They should tell you this section is for ICD-10. This section you'll find your, use your CPT manual as reference or ICD-10 manual. Yeah, you'll get really clear directions
Okay.
as to where you need to be looking. Great question, Angel. Great question. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions about that so far? What we talked about, code ranges, where you can find those? No. All right, cool. All right, so also to talk about the code ranges in the book, they are alphabetized, y'all. It starts in the tabular at A and it ends at Z. Okay, so when you're looking for codes or looking for diagnosis or looking for other things, take that into consideration that everything in this book is number alphabetized and then number 2 in numerical order. Okay, your code A01 is going to come before A02 always. All right, in the book when you're lining it out, that's the way that it's going to be set up. That's important for you to know. Let's see. All right, so on pages 32 and 33 in your textbook, they start talking about how the tabular indexes are broken down. And that is super helpful. They give you some examples and they show you on here where the chapter, the section, the category, the subcategory, and then below that, there are sub-classifications. ICD-10 codes go up to 7 characters long, and they always are going to start with one alphabet and usually 1 or 2 numbers. All right, like if you're looking at page 33, you'll see the first little example they give you. It starts with chapter 13 is your chapter. Your section is other joint disorders. And then you'll see it starts with M20 to M25. Okay, M25. That's going to be your main category or your category. And then your subcategories are going to go under that. And basically what all the subcategories are doing is getting more specific. Okay, they're just telling you more about what's going on with that particular diagnosis. Like M25 is other joint disorder not elsewhere classified. Okay, that's a very general code, M25. It's not at all specified down. That's the main category, and it is very seldom that you will ever use that main category as your diagnosis code. You're going to require some type of specification about it. Like if you look under M25, you have M25.5. And then it goes on and it shows pain in hand, fingers, foot, limb, and toes. And these are all different codes, right? So you have to find the one that is most specific to what you're working on, basically. It's always going to start with that one alpha prefix and then followed by numbers.
Are you looking at the textbooks that's in e-learning, or are we looking at the ICD-10 modules?
Right now, the textbook. Like
Okay.
I've been switching back and forth. Like starting on page 31, chapter 2 in your textbook was that first one with the list of chapters. And now I'm on page 32 and 33 in the textbook. And it's figure 2.2- is the one I was showing, M25. And then if you look down, M25.5. Okay. And do y'all see that little red stop sign by the M25? That little red stop sign means that you cannot code that. You cannot use that code. You cannot stop there. It's like a little red octagon. You might as well take it as a stop sign because it says stop. Do not code this. Do not use this code. It needs to be more specific. So anytime you see that little red octagon next to a code, that's not your answer. Like it's a given, that's not your answer, okay? You gotta get specific. It's gonna
Okay,
require more.
we have a question on the exam that points out like pain in the shoulder, but it's not specified. Then we'll mark that at M25 519 and does not stop at the M2551.
Correct. It would be M25.519.
Okay.
If it was unspecified, yeah, if it didn't specify a shoulder, you would use the unspecified code. That's correct. And
Okay.
most of your codes are like that, especially when you're dealing with limbs. It's going to give you a right, a left, and an unspecified. There's going to be 3 different options under whatever that code is when you're dealing with limbs and things like that. And it's like that for a lot of codes. There's in all of the organs and body systems, you can get more specific than, liver or kidney, right kidney, left kidney, upper abdominal, lower abdominal, things like that. There are ways they break it down really, really well for you. And they want you to be as specific as possible. A lot of the unspecified codes are not usable codes for that reason. There's a lot of them that are in there and you'll see a little red stop sign every time because they require a specification. And if, say, you get a doctor's report and it doesn't specify a shoulder or whatever it is, whatever requirement that they're asking you for to code, you have to go back to the doctor and find out. You have to go dig through the notes. And if it's not in the notes, you go back to his staff. You get with the nurse and you say, hey, I need more information on this. Are there more notes you can send me? Or is there somebody I can talk to that was there that day? Something. You got to have something to break it down. Otherwise, you can't code it, because they will not accept the generalized codes on a lot of things. So that's
Okay, I have one more question. I'm so sorry.
You have good questions. Don't worry about it.
So when it's time to do the certification, will they be divided in categories? Because I know we're doing medical billing and coding, and then I know we have MOA as well.
MOA is it's two different certifications. MOA is your one, and it's that medical office assistant, the administrative stuff. And then you have coding and insurance, I think is what they call it, is coding and insurance. And I think that it is broken up in the particular exam. Like you got coding in one part and then insurance in the second part. And I don't know if they break it down into subcategories lower than that, but I think they do specify. But it'll be obvious to you when you hit the coding part, because it'll be nothing but codes. All your multiple choice answers will be codes, and all you have to do is process of eliminate out the incorrect ones, basically. So that is good to know. Great question. Don't ever be afraid to ask questions, y'all, because more than likely you're not the only person that has that same question, like at all. So, but page 32 and 33 give you great examples of where how the chapters are laid out and broken down into the chapter, the section, the category, etc. Okay, so if later on you're coding and it asks you for, what subsection something is in, or what category, or something like that, or what section, you can reference back to this and see, okay, this is how it lays out, so I can figure out which section I'm in or need to be in or whatever. So super handy information there. Okay. All right. So all right. So I see, did I assign y'all exercise 2-3? chapter exercise 2-3?
I hope so, because I just did it.
If you did, Sierra, just upload it. I'll give you, if I didn't ask for it, I'll give you extra credit for it.
Okay.
That's no problem. But this is a perfect example of how we ask for code ranges. Okay, it was the code range for mental, behavioral, neurodevelopmental disorders is, and it gives you multiple choice.
You did ask for it. You asked for 2, 1, 2, 2, and 2, 3.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. So, like I was just saying, perfect way to find out what that is to look on those end pages, you know, in the CPT manual. And there you have it. There will be your answers. Let's see. All right, they talk a little bit about the includes and excludes notes, some of the different abbreviations and highlighted things and how different things are highlighted in different colors and all of that. So you definitely want to go over that, like excludes 1 and excludes 2. You will see that a lot. So they say on page 37 in your textbook, excludes 1. An excludes 1 note is a pure excludes. It means not coded here. And they got that in all caps. It indicates that the code excluded should not be assigned at the same time as the code above the note. So basically what that says is when you have a code and you see that excludes 1, they're going to give you another code. And what that means is do not code these together. You may be tempted to for some reason, but we're telling you not to. And that's why it's really important, guys, to read the full definitions when you get to the tabular, to these codes. You want to read the full definition and all the little notes underneath, because there's a lot of things that you can't code together. Like they've come up over the years, they've come up with codes that encompass different things, right? Like, for example, as an example of how this could break down, before the flu was a thing, you might have had people who got sick who came in and had fever, chills, chest congestion, and you have diagnoses for all those, right? You have codes for all of those. So then they figured out that all of these people who had all these same symptoms all have the flu. They all suffering from the same thing. So what do? They do a code for flu, which will encompass, you know what happens with the flu, right? So you may not have to list out all these different, and that's just an example. It's just an example. I think you do still have to code things like fever and stuff like that, body aches, maybe, and stuff like that when you code flu if it's a thing. But you get my point. You get my point. There's codes that will include different things in one as time progresses, as science progresses and medicine progresses. That's the main changes that happen in the coding books from year to year, is just updates. Very rarely, like in the past 5 years, I've seen 2 major additions to the coding books: COVID and monkeypox. Those were not a thing before the last 5 years. And those were especially COVID. COVID was a worldwide event, and it was something we didn't have codes for. We were not prepared. There were no codes for the vaccines at the time. Like everybody knows, the vaccines weren't finished. So they weren't in use. We weren't coding for them. So as medical community, we knew, well, we have to figure out, we have to watch CMS's website daily for the updates. And we did. As the situation progressed, they updated their website daily to update the medical community. Okay. So, but you'll know when we're having a worldwide event and there's things that are popping up in your workplace that have never been there before, right? We're gonna know this stuff. But that's why it's important to know all of your resources that are out there, not just your coding manuals, but everything out there on the internet. Now, the internet, just like everything else, it has its pros and cons. It's an invaluable source of information. And then the con of that is anybody can put inaccurate information out there. So you got to vet your sites. You got to make sure that you're on a reputable site like CMS that's run by the government, or AMA, American Medical Association. These are the governing bodies that write these manuals and update them yearly. They're okay to check with. You do not want to go to like Wiki CPT. I don't even know if that's a thing, but I wouldn't do that. Okay, like wiki coding, no. There are people on YouTube, coders on YouTube, that go over when you have a certain scenario. If you work in a certain industry, there are people on YouTube that you can watch code for stuff in your industry, and they'll give you helpful tips. If there's, I don't know, say you work for an orthopedist and there's a new surgery that's being developed, and you don't really know how to code it correctly. You're getting errors or whatever. Do some internet research. I bet there's somebody on YouTube who's showing people how to code it correctly. You just never know. There's great stuff out there. So just don't forget about the internet, basically. All right. So let's see, what else? All right, also, all the little signs and symbols that you see around your definitions, the stop sign, different colons, those different highlighted areas. You'll see abbreviations for different things. If you look down at the bottom of the page, and again, coding manual is great for this because it's on every single page. Can't see it. But anyway, down at the bottom of the page down here, there's like a legend that tells you what all those things are. And it's on every single page. So you don't have to flip anywhere to figure out when you're looking at a code and you're going, what does this highlight mean? What does that symbol mean? It's right down at the bottom of the page for you, okay? And then if I'm not mistaken, there's a section at the very beginning of the manual that goes into deeper meaning about what all those symbols are. It lists them out, and it defines it even more for you, goes into more specification. But that's at the beginning. Again, one of those really useful reference sections that I talk about all the time. And y'all remember I was telling y'all about, you'll find like the most odd, sometimes you'll find actual like humorous codes. I'm looking at something right here that says rat bite fever. Good Lord. No, thank you. I will pass on the rat bite fever. But and I'm hoping to have a few more examples of that for y'all tomorrow, some of the funny stuff that you can find in there. And I think that's about it. I think that's a pretty good overview of all the most important points. Let's see, I'm trying to look at what else. So they did talk about the 7th characters and placeholders on page 40. We're going to get more detailed about that tomorrow, okay? Placeholders and where the X goes and how many X's you got to use and all that. It's not near as complicated as it seems, I promise. I promise. And I'm explaining it to where y'all are gonna be like, oh, okay, cool. Not a big thing. But we'll get more into that tomorrow, more detailed with that. But that's pretty much it for chapter 2. That's pretty much it. You definitely want to read up on that 7th characters and placeholder section. I'd go over that one more time just to make sure you have a clear understanding. Like I said, again, we are going to go over that in more detail and give you some examples and show you how to work it out. But something I want to tell y'all too, as y'all are going through, as we're going through the coding, And y'all will notice we are going to get to a point where we are going to go chapter by chapter through the manual and code just that chapter, just the infectious diseases. And then the next week we're going to hit the next chapter, and so on and so forth. And we're going to go through the whole thing. So y'all will get a little bit of practice coding every kind of codes that there are in these manuals. And again, it's going to be a lot of repetition, guys, but that's how coding is going to click with you. That's what it takes to really get it down, is just practicing. Get in there and practicing. So I know it's going to get a little bit monotonous. It always does. And at the beginning, it can seem a little overwhelming, but I promise y'all, in a few weeks, y'all are going to be like, bam, 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 bam. And then one day, just out of the blue, you're going to be doing a chapter exercise, and it's all going to be light bulbs and fireworks, and you're going to go, oh, because then it's going to click. Like, oh, cake. Okay, I got this. Okay. So that is about all I got for y'all today. Just, like I said, just some real important things to pay attention to, and some things that are going to help y'all out. And again, tomorrow we're going to get more detail into some different things, some fun stuff. So Sierra got some side action going on. All right, any questions before we get out of here for today?
I have one.
What you got, Angel?
Are we gonna be still doing SimChart?
No, once you've done with that module, you're done with it.
Oh, so we don't have to worry about that no more.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so
No.
everything till graduation. Well, not graduation, but like completion is really coding.
Pretty much. Pretty
Just
much.
gonna- okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You're, what, Angel, about a third of the way through, halfway through?
I want to say Miss Kelly said my expected graduation was in October, but I was like, I think I get completed.
So you're right about 30%. You're right around that 30% mark right now if your finish date's in October. So yeah, you started at the time where we went ahead and we've done SimChart. And now we're gonna hit the coding. And the rest of it for you, unfortunately, is gonna be mostly coding.
Okay.
It's gonna fly. It's gonna fly by.
I had got in whenever we was coding, and I was like, "What are we
Yeah,
doing?"
you got in at the end. You got to
Yeah.
get in, and I was telling y'all, don't freak out. Stick with me. And this is why. Now we're in that part where you're gonna get the lowdown in the beginning of the coding part, and you're gonna be like, oh. Yeah. What you got here?
I was just wondering if this was a typo in the assignment list, because it keeps
Probably.
saying prepare for your chapter 2 exam on day 8:30, Monday, September 12th. And I was like, okay,
I
that
did
must be
not
for
proofread close
another
enough.
class. Yeah.
I'll go in and fix that. Yeah, that's a typo. It is day 8 of 30, but that's tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, y'all. Sometimes when I'm opening up assignments, I'm going fast and I will miss stuff. I'm the first to claim human, first one. So just if y'all notice something like that, just shoot me a text and let me know and say, hey, you got a typo on day 8 lab or whatever.
Okay.
So I can go in and correct it for everybody who hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, I just saw it today.
I
Yeah.
do not at all mind constructive criticism, but it's got to be constructive. Like, don't come at me crazy. All right. Any other questions before we wrap it up today? Let me write down who is here, because like I said, it's not mandatory. This Zoom is not for a grade, but I still like to know who comes to stuff, because like I say, when we're wrapping up modules and you got a 1 or 2 point difference between an A or a B, but you come to all my Zooms, I'm going to give you that point. Okay. So I like to keep track of who comes. So let me, and y'all, I'm one of them people. I don't like people to mess with my stuff. Like, I'm real, like, my stuff is my stuff, and like, don't mess with my stuff. Like, keep your hands off my stuff. People like me might not all have kids, because that child is all over my stuff, and it drives me crazy. I don't know if it's just my 5-year-old, if everybody's 5-year-olds are all up in their business. And it's like, I don't think people probably call me crazy in Walmart because I'm consistently telling my child to get out my butt. I'm like, why are you so far up my butt right now? You're killing me.
That's my almost 2-year-old.
Y'all. Oh, and you definitely will get attendance for coming to Zoom always. Automatic attendance for that. Y'all know that. Sierra. And there's a couple of y'all that are on here that are not usually on Thursday Zoom. Is that because this time works good for y'all?
No, I really try to make Thursday Zooms, but the way my life is set up, it completely just goes away. And then when I get the remind link for after you record it, I'm like, no, I missed the Zoom. So I try.
It's okay. It's okay. It really is. As long as you go back and you watch the recordings, just so you don't miss the important announcements and the little tidbits and stuff like that that you don't get from just going over the material. That's why I say, oh, and also, y'all, this is where me manually grading your exams comes into play hardcore. Y'all notice that half of y'all got Fs until I manually grade them, and then most of those Fs went to like As. For some reason, with the coding and anything that you have to fill in a word, it almost always marks it wrong. So I will be manually grading every exam y'all have for like the next 4 months, okay? So no worries about, don't freak out about that F or that D or whatever it might be until after I manually grade it. And last week's exams are caught up. If you made less than an A, if you made a B or under, I reopened it for you. So those are retakes already if y'all want that. Most of y'all make A's. Most of y'all made A's after I went in and fixed all the errors. So, yes, you got your A, girl.
I made a
Yeah, I know I got an F for this week's one, but
no, look, I had some of my new students blowing me up, talking about, what is this? I got this right. I got this right. And I'm like, I know. This is why I go in and manually grade everything. I touch every exam, okay, to make sure that y'all are getting what y'all.
Like everything. If I just put a capital letter and I got it wrong.
Yeah, it's real particular. Like, real particular. It's stupid. It's stupid, really. That, like I said, that's why I go in and I check them myself. So, no worries about that. Oh, and for anybody who didn't know, my favorite book series and movie series is Harry Potter. Like, I'm a big old Potter nerd. Big old. So, and usually most of my students have no problem knowing that, because I used to do a once a week, one of the daily assignments would be a Harry Potter trivia question. So everybody knew that my favorite thing was Harry Potter, but they don't let me do that no more.
I was gonna put that on the test, Harry Potter, because that's the only series that I know is a book series and a movie series.
Yeah,
but then, I might be wrong.
It's the best. Like, don't even get me on my Potter soapbox. Here for another 30 minutes, for real. But anywho, all right. Well, if y'all don't have anything else for me today, that's all I've got for y'all guys. And again, thank y'all so much for coming today. I really, really appreciate y'all.
Yes.
All right. Y'all have a great evening, and I'll see y'all tomorrow at 2.
All righty.
Bye.